Welcome to the channel. In today's episode, we're going to compare the worn out AP coilover suspension. It's pretty old, it's pretty stiff. It doesn't seem to be leaking or anything, but it's not a comfortable ride, not at all. We're going to compare it to a cheap setup that consists of Atec dampers, I think they're called Atec. The entire set cost me 70 euros, or what is equivalent to $70 or so. While this Bilstein setup, we're going to compare it to this also, and this cost me more or less at least twice as much. We're going to take a ride in the car and see how it does using a gforce meter, go over some speed bumps, and see if we can gather some info about how stiff the suspension setup is on the car currently. Then we're gonna install the cheap setup, do the same thing, and then install the Bilstein setup and do the same thing again. This car was equipped with MTech2 dampers, I think they're called. That means it's a little bit lowered from the factory. All these shocks and struts, they are for the car. That means MTech2. It's a bit hard to get the right springs and such, but I've gone with the tried and true eibach versions. I've used eibach lowering springs on most of my cars so far, and I always found them pretty good. And we're going to use the same springs for both setups. So we're actually going to go from a coilover system to a more traditional shock and strut with a regular spring combo. One thing I have noticed right off the bat is that these Atec dampers here, although being still MTech2 and for a sports suspension car, they're pretty soft, at least against the Bilstein ones. I have primed them. If you don't know what that is, then it's just depressing the rod into the strut, the shock, a couple of times. But so far, definitely the Bilstein seem a bit harder. So it'll be interesting to see whether or not, how can I say, if the Bilsteins retain any comfort compared to the cheap setup, and just in general, how will the cheap setup drive compared to the more OEM replacement style Bilstein versions. So the next thing to do will be to actually get the car off the ground and then just start tearing away. Okay, so one thing I definitely have noticed so far after having assembled one of the cheap struts is that on first impressions I thought that the Bilstein ones were actually longer. They're not. It's just that the last part of the rebound here for some reason doesn't go all the way back. Let me show you one. Okay, so normally you would prime it a few times and then the piston would be full length here. When I let it depress by itself, it doesn't go all the way. I think that's about its natural stop. Now look here what happens if I pull it. Let me film from the side. This is more or less fully decompressed, and then this is how much it pulls in when I release it. I've tried bending it, I don't know, 10 times or something like that, but it just doesn't get any better. So that's definitely something that makes it a little bit harder to install. As I had to compress this spring quite a lot to actually be able to, let me see there, to actually be able to get the threads exposed for me to put on the lock nut. So yeah, that's that. Now on to the next one. So the new suspension is installed. Not much to say about that, honestly. It went pretty smoothly. No real challenges in installing it. The only thing I'm a bit worried about is whether or not that'll be, if this dust boot here is too long for a lowered suspension. It's pretty close to the trailing arm here, so I don't know. Let's see. You see? I don't know. Time will tell. I'll install the wheels and go for a ride, see how it handles compared to the AP suspension setup. Here, the old suspension setup is the AP coilovers. Okay, let's try it out. First bump coming up. Hit it with 40. Seems a bit stiff still. I know a great driving road where we can test the car out. Let's see, without breaking any laws, that is. For some reason it feels like there's more self-centering on this setup. It should be the same. Small bumps in the road are definitely handled better. The smaller imperfections. Let's see. A bit more body roll. Pretty rough ride, but not bad at all. A little bit crashy still. Obviously new suspension in terms of various bushings and trailing arms and so on would help a lot. Let's see. Soon there'll be some roads here where we can push it a little further. It is comfier though, but not really that much. Let's see. Oh, an old Ford. I really hope the microphone is picking up my voice. Otherwise this will be a shit video. Okay, let's try and push it a little without breaking the speed limit. It does handle nice, though I must say. Definitely not something you'd install for increased comfort, but the comfort is a little bit better than the AP suspension, but not much, and the roll is worse with this, the body roll, but it still handles really nicely. I'd say if you are looking for a cheap regular type suspension setup, then these budget ones, they will do the trick. It's hot in here. Need to do some more driving. Let's see a bump here. Okay, it does. I don't know, maybe it's starting to settle, the suspension. Maybe it's beginning to be, what's it called, be broken in, but it does seem to handle the imperfections in the roads a lot better. Let's see here. Yeah, this. Oh, it is better. Yeah. I don't know, maybe it just needed to settle. It's beginning to feel a lot more planted, so to say. It's growing on me. Maybe now it's beginning to be a little bit more impressed with what you get for the money. in these super cheap shocks. I'm starting to get really excited about how they will compare with the Bilstein ones. Let's see, imperfection, nice. Here's a really harsh bump coming up. It's definitely more comfortable without losing much handling ability. But there is some additional body roll, but it's not much, and this is definitely preferable. 40 kilometers per hour, better, but room for improvement, but better. Let's see. These are the ones I tested the other setup on, 40 kilometers per hour. Definitely better in terms of comfort, that is. 40 kilometers per hour, better. Here you can see how low the car sits with these eibach springs and these Atec dampers. Let's just take a closer look from here. In terms of ride height, I'm happy. Looks good. Just some final thoughts on this setup. There's a lot of value for the money, in my opinion, if you're just looking for some new shocks that won't break the budget with this, which is in these inflationary times. It's pretty nice if you can save some money and still get a decent setup. And I must admit, this setup is definitely decent. Yeah, just a lot of value for the money, really. I'm really excited to see how they'll do against the Bilstein B4 setup. But again, if you're looking for something super cheap, these will do the trick. Super excited to see how the industry standard Bilstein B4s will do compared to the insanely cheap Atec system. We'll drive the exact same road and see what happens, and oh my god, I do hope that it picks up the sound, the built-in microphone. Let's find out, do or die. Now, the one thing I did learn from the previous install is that you can't judge the shocks by their, okay, already there it's better, but they need to be broken in, so to say. They need to settle, possibly for around 100 or 200 kilometers, but at least with the Atec, once I had done a 20 kilometer stint, they were a lot better in terms of handling and how it absorbed the actual imperfections in the road. So, but I don't know, just from those two speed bumps alone, it's already improved in terms of comfort. It's not supposed to be a comfortable drive as such, but it's not supposed to be a jarring drive either. So it has to be some kind of mix, and those Atecs actually did a pretty good job in the end, although with a little bit of additional body roll. But let's see what this one does. Okay, so it seems the sound is good, and the camera angles is also decent enough. At least I'll spare you from my ugly face, but it's definitely good enough to do a test drive with, including the audio. Maybe even the audio is a little bit better, but yeah, let's keep testing. Almost magic in some way, that like the small imperfections in the road that you could definitely both feel and hear with the Atec setup is, I don't know, they're not gone, but they are drastically reduced. Big bumps are still somewhat harsh, as they should be on a car like this. How about doing 35 on this? That's perfectly acceptable, honestly. Interesting to see what will happen in, I don't know, 10 or 20 kilometers or so, if they get even better, or if they're just like good out the box and that's what you get. Whereas the Atec kind of had to be driven a little before they settled. But yeah, this is no doubt better. You can kind of feel it soaking up the small bumps and imperfections in the road. It just muffles them so well. better setup. I don't know why I'm surprised. I honestly shouldn't be, because I was a little bit impressed by the Atec system as well, but obviously much better. I compared them to the extremely stiff Atec, extremely stiff AB coilover system, you know, so it's kind of they really had to be super shitty for them not to excel. But compared to these, they're definitely not as good. These are really good. I wonder if I can launch the car with these shocks. Even though these do have even more body roll than the Atec ones, they feel better in the twisties. Feels more controlled, more planted, more ready. It's the better setup, honestly. This is about where I noticed that the Atec system had somehow improved, had settled, and started acting better, performing better, I should say. Let's see how the Bilstein does in the city. Imperfections on the roads here. What about this one? Yeah, better. I'll need to fix this one of these days. Too much slop here. This is a patch of road where it was extremely noticeable that the Atecs did better than the coilover system. So let's see how this compares to the Atec. There's some really harsh imperfections here, and this one is one of them. Yeah. Even better. Let's head back to the garage, and I'll probably do some final thoughts or so. Okay, it's time for a conclusion, I guess. There's no doubt that the Bilstein B4s are better than the Atec, and the Atec are also an improvement on the coilovers as well. Atec provides a pretty good value for the money, honestly, and it will probably, for most people, seem a bit more of a sporty setup. compared to the Bilsteins. The Bilsteins do have even more comfort though, and as you push it in the twisties, it soaks up the various imperfections even better, feels more controlled, more planted. So whereas the Atec system is more compliant than the coilover system, which is very old. This Bilstein setup gives even more comfort without losing any handling capability, in my opinion. Whether or not it's worth, I don't know, 4 times the price, I don't know. I guess that's up to you. What I can say and have said a few times is that the Atec definitely does provide value for the money. That's for sure. For how long? I don't know. Maybe being that cheap, they won't be good for more than 20,000-30,000 kilometers, whereas usually a good suspension setup, good shocks will net you around 80 or 100,000 kilometers before they really start to degrade. So yeah, if you have any things that you'd like for me to test, or if you have any questions, please leave a comment. Consider subscribing if you feel this is entertaining in the least. And again, if you have anything you'd like me to test, let me know. A big thank you for watching, and I hope it added some value. Bye.